So, older adults, why do we talk about this? Why do we give such a big care? Older adults, there's an aging population, right? Our life expectancy has increased. Men have increased by 12.8 years, roughly. Women have increased their life expectancy by almost 16 years. Can you sign on the back, please? Thank you. We have the baby boomers that are coming. We have lots of people surviving acute illnesses, right? Before, if you got really sick, we didn't have the technology or the resources to take care of you. Now we do. We're living with chronic illnesses longer, and by the year 2030, the percentage of our population that's going to be above the age of 65 is about 20%. So that's a big part of our population that's going to be older. Education and technology. Now, I know a lot of you would laugh at your grandparents trying to use their cell phones or like I think my dad calls it the snappy chat or whatever, but they're learning technology. They have increased access to resources. They can get on the internet. They can access things more reliably. It's a diverse population. We have widowed, single, partners, male, female, male, way different amounts of relationships now. It's a much more diverse community. A lot of them are outliving their children, their spouses, their siblings. We have big ethnic diversity. There's a lot of, like we said, because we have this aging population because of advanced technology, we have a lot of people with disabilities or chronic illnesses that are surviving a lot longer. So it's a much more diverse, and just their socioeconomic and financial situations are very broad. You have people living on the streets, people that are very well off. We talked about location just then. They can be anywhere. When we think of old people, everyone imagines them little frail old ladies or men in nursing homes, right? But a lot of them are living at home. My 96-year-old grandmother, I think she's 96 now, she rides her bike still around the neighborhood. And she lives by herself. So you have this, and then you have my dad who's 70 who lives with me and acts like he's 96. So you just have this wide range. And then there's this ageism. It's this negative attitude based on age. It's saying that, they can't do something because they're old. Like my 96-year-old grandmother can't ride her bike because she's old. But remember, age isn't defined by a number. It's defined by the attitude and what they can do. All right. I'm going to go through these quickly, okay? So if you missed something, it's okay. Aging, or Area Agency of Aging. That's a tricky one, AOA. It's part of the Department of Health and Human Services, so it's federally funded. And funding then comes from a federal level and is filtered out to state and local levels. And they have a whole network of services, both social and health. Medicare, this is also federally funded, and it's for anyone over the age of 65. That's why most people continue to work or try to work until the age of 65 because they need their health insurance from their jobs. Once they turn 65, then they can apply. And it's any time, typically, the year that they turn 65. So even if you're lucky and you're a December baby, in January, that's the year you turn 65. So that's considered. They sometimes, Medicare will cover, if they're less than 65, if there's a disability or they have end-stage renal disease. And you guys will see I use a lot of shorthand when I type. You can use my shorthand, or I would come up with your own. It will help you not only when you're taking notes, but when you're taking report from the nurses. Sometimes you guys, You're really cute. You write down like 400 like sentences. So it's just a quick way to. All right, Medicaid is different. How? One, it's state instead of federal. And it's on a needs-based to assist with medical expenses. So you have to qualify for it. Documentation is humongous with Medicaid. So this is why we briefly cover this with you guys, because as nurses, if your documentation doesn't show that the patient has a need, Medicaid will refuse it, right? Because the state only has so many funds, and they're going to look for any way to kind of allocate those funds the best they can. And so if they say, if you're like, well, I have to do CPT on him every single day, but you've never documented, and you're like, I really think he needs CPT when he goes home, Medicaid's going to be like, but there was no documentation that you ever used it. Or if you say, he struggles getting to the bathroom, and I really think he could benefit by physical therapy, if you don't put that in your documentation, then they're not gonna cover it. So a lot of times we think the things we do are silly or not important, or they're just what we do, but they are important to document. There are several parts. Part A, B, C, and D. A is free. It covers basically everything. Part B covers outpatient, but patients have to pay for it. Part C is private. And Part D covers prescriptions, and you also have to pay. So just because they have Medicaid, they may also have a part of Medicaid that doesn't cover everything. So they may only qualify. Do you have a question?
No.
Yeah.
So A, B, C, D is all part of Medicaid.
Yes. Not Medicare. Medicare you get once you turn 65. It is federally funded, and that's why we pay all those wonderful taxes, and everybody who turns 65 qualifies for Medicare under the federal portion. Medicaid is distributed by your states, and you have to apply for it. Typically, it's a lot of children will get it, and you have to have a certain income status to qualify for it. If you can't afford to purchase your own insurance, or you don't get it through your employer. So, and then they have all these different parts. Like if maybe you have A, which covers everything, which like inpatient hospice, but you didn't get D prescriptions. Well, that's great if your kid goes into the hospital, but what if they have a $600 prescription they need every month? So, and again, that's why documentation is so important, because if you don't document why they need that med or why they need that service, they may only qualify for one or a couple of the parts. All right. So, when we talk about how we care for older adults, one thing we do a lot is home health care, right? We see that we don't want to keep a lot of patients in the hospital because it's super expensive. And because we have this booming population where 20% is now eating up those federal funds for Medicare, and now we have all these people with Medicaid and the state's trying to allocate. They're trying to keep them out of the hospitals and in their homes. So you'll see a lot of nurses involved in home health care. Home health is a method of delivering care. So it's a method. Typically, the patient has to have homebound status. I'm sorry, not typically. They do have to have homebound status. And they have to require skilled nursing care. So skilled RN care. This could be even if it's part-time, full-time, whatever. They have to be homebound. They have to have skilled RN care. We want caregivers to be involved. So my husband goes home. He's got a deep wound. He's got a pick. So he's homebound because he can't walk because his leg or whatever. And the nurse comes out every day to give him his, to do his dressing change. I'm still going to be involved as far as I may help the nurse do the dressing change because she may do it once a day, but it may be required twice a day. But all Medicaid or Medicare may pay for is once a day. So she's going to teach me how to do the other day, and she'll just come out that one time to make sure I'm doing a good job. Or she may show me how to administer the meds through the pick, and then I'll have to do it the rest of the time, and she just comes by once a week to make sure I'm doing it right. So it could be a lot of involved care by the nurse or just intermittent, but they have to have the nurse involved, and the caregiver needs to be involved. The physician has to recommend it. And Medicare will reimburse it. Medicaid will sometimes reimburse, but again, what's key? Documentation. So, what does home health services provide? Big thing is health maintenance. This is different than health promotion. What's health promotion? Anybody? Bueller?
Teaching about healthy habits.
Yeah, teaching about healthy habits. So I teach you, okay, if you exercise 4 times a week and you eat healthy and I give you this diet, you'll prevent diseases. That's different than health maintenance for someone like a diabetic who just reinforces, are you using your insulin right? Okay? We don't, with home health, they will not pay for health promotion. They help with health maintenance, but they don't pay for health promotion. Education. We educate them, like we talked about their disease, about how to use that PICC line. We help prevent illness by providing that health maintenance. But again, it's not health promotion. We help with diagnosis and treatment of disease. Home health can provide palliative care. And rehab care can be provided at home. Physical therapy, occupational, social work. So who are the team members? Home health team. Many of you that are coming through this program, it's the LPN, the nurse, right? Their nurse is like the most important person that's part of this. He or she is the case manager. They basically are kind of overlook everything that's involved in the patient care in the home. So if they walk in and they see that the patient's having a hard time getting to the bathroom because there's obstacles or because they can't transfer well, the nurse will make a recommendation to the physician and say, I think physical therapy needs to get involved. Or the nurse comes by and visit and the caregiver that's involved is like, well, they will only eat if I'm there to help them. I have to spoon feed them because they're having a hard time. Then the nurse will then, again, as the case manager, will say, okay, physician, I need an occupational therapist involved. So the physician writes the orders, but they're not there. They don't see the patient. They don't get really involved. The nurse needs the orders from the physician, but the nurse is that case manager who kind of handles everything. Oh, I forgot to write. Sometimes I forget to hit play. If I do, just let me know. So the physician, PT, OT, social work, those are all, like we said, part of the team. But you guys are the bomb diggity and do all the work. All right, so we said home health can provide palliative care, right? Which is also end of life. And we're going to kind of distinguish between palliative care and hospice. Is that something on your module? It is. All right. It is a holistic approach. The patient has some kind of life-limiting illness, and this is in any stage. It doesn't matter if they've had a life-limiting illness and the family took a long time to kind of come to grips with that, and so now it's like 3 days away, and they're like, we want palliative care. It's not like, you're not going to be like, sorry, you missed that boat. No, you're going to say, okay, let's provide you palliative care for those 3 days. Or they could have gotten the diagnosis today, you have cancer, you may die, and they may be like, I need palliative care. Then you go ahead and initiate it. So it's any time during the stage they have some kind of life-limiting illness. It can be initiated, like I said, on diagnosis or during any stage. And it includes all the disciplines that we've talked about. Nursing, physicians, OT, PT, anybody in the healthcare system. It is completely patient-driven. Their beliefs, their culture, their wishes, their values. We are just there to make them feel comfortable. And it can happen anywhere. Ooh, sorry, y'all. A bunch of different settings. It can be at home. It can be in a hospital, an acute care facility. It can be in a long-term facility. So palliative care is not a place. It is not, it's just how we take care of them. What's our goals? Yeah, comfort, right? We don't want them to suffer. We don't want the family members to suffer. They're going through a hard time right now. We want to make any part of their quality of life better. And that's not just for the patient, it's for the family too. And we want to decrease any of their symptoms or pain, which is going to help relieve that suffering. We're not hastening death. We're not just writing you off. You've got a terminal illness. Unfortunately, death is very near. People are very reluctant to talk about death. And this person is scared and sick and doesn't feel good. And is that a way to live life? No. All right. So if palliative care is how we approach it, what is hospice? It's kind of a concept. A lot of people think hospice is a place. It's not a place. You can receive, again, hospice at home and an acute care setting at a hospice center. But it's basically this concept of care for them. At this point, the patient is foregoing curative care. So while they're getting palliative care, they can still receive curative treatments, right? So palliative care, they may still be on chemo for cancer. They may still be getting stuff for their end-stage renal disease. But once we've entered hospice, we're saying, no more treatment. I'm done. This is when we start showing some compassion, some concern, support. And it's, again, is it for just the patient? No, it's meant for the family. It's very holistic. Yes, sir.
So when they receive hospice, that means this is it?
They have decided to forego curative treatment. So palliative care, they have a diagnosis of an end-stage illness, right? But they still may be receiving treatment. Once we've hospice, they forego that. They're foregoing curative treatment. So hospice is often a part of palliative care. And again, the focus is on quality, not quantity. Again, it's a lot of different settings and a lot of different people. And it can be intermittent or continuous. So let's say somebody is in hospice. They feel sick all the time. They've been getting chemo. They went to the doctor. My tumor's bigger. It's not smaller. I'm ready to just go be comfortable. I'm done with curative treatment. I'm good. Then a month goes by. You know what? I'm feeling better. I don't feel as bad. I went to the doctor. My tumor's stable. You know what? I may want to start chemo again. So now we're done with hospice for a little bit. We're still getting palliative care. We're still getting help and all that, but we're out of the hospice system. Does that make sense? Okay. Hospice is often underused because people think that they're giving up. Because they're not getting that curative treatment anymore, family members get very upset. Because they're like if someone, let's say a hospice patient develops a fever, we won't give them antibiotics because that's what? Curative, right? So unless the family asks for it to make them comfortable, but typically if they develop a fever or whatever, we would give Tylenol. Mm-hmm.
What if the patient's diabetic? Would they receive insulin or anything?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd have to ask them if that's considered curative or comfort. Because if your sugars go all the way up, I would imagine you felt like crap. I would say, just based on what I know, that it would be, yes, you would still give insulin because it's not curing the disease or trying to cure the disease. It's just maintaining comfort. Yeah.
Plus, if it was a cancer issue and not necessarily a diabetic issue, they could do that for the life.
Yeah.
So you remove that.
Yeah. So,
They ask for it.
huh?
I think it's more based on whether they ask for it, because I know my mother-in-law, she had
Yeah.
diabetes, she also had end-stage renal disease,
Mhm.
they just cut it all out.
Yeah. And that's another thing. It just, if the patient, again, this is all, who drives this? Patient. So it's very varied. So one patient may say, I'm done, I'm tired, but I still want my diabetic treatment. Some might say, just forget it all. Like, these are my last few days. I just want to spend it with my family. I don't want to be poked anymore. So it's very varied for each person. But it's very underused. And families tend to get very upset, especially with the person who's going through it, because they feel like, well, why are you giving up? And then that's not it. This person has a terminal illness. They're tired, they're hurting, they're suffering. They want their quality of life to improve. 80% of people who use hospice are Caucasian, so it's significantly underused in the African American community because they're viewed as wanting to tough it out. And like I said, the patient can withdraw from the program at any time. Mm-hmm.
Is there like a defining point between hospice and palliative care?
No, it's very kind of fluid.
Okay.
Yeah. The big thing is that you're foregoing the curative treatment in hospice.
So you can still be receiving care.
You can be in hospice and receiving palliative care. That's part of it. And you can float out of hospice. So if you decide you want to start treatments back up, then you can still receive palliative care, but you wouldn't be with hospice. Does that make sense?
And in palliative care, you can still be treating the disease or just the symptoms?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Say it again. Okay, sorry. I think I'm like going deaf and it drives me bonkers. When I run, I like to listen to my earbuds like really loud, and I like music that gets me going, which is not always appropriate. And so, so I think I'm like going deaf now. I'm like educating people. Don't put your earbuds in. So I'm going deaf. So if you have to repeat something, I'm sorry. All right. So hospice has 2 criteria. The patient has to desire the service, and they have to be eligible. How are they eligible? 2 physicians say they have less than 6 months to live. Now, if you reach that 6-month mark, you're like, oh, you live longer. You have to go out of hospice now. No, they just recertify it, okay? When they recertified only 1 physician, but don't worry about that, But they have to basically 2 physicians have to say this patient has less than 6 months to live. The eligible, that's it, less than 6 months to live. All right, Nurse explains to a patient with advanced cancer about the difference between hospice and palliative care. Which statement is made by the patient indicating teaching was effective? Hospice is not available if I'm in a hospital. Anyone like that one?
No.
Why not?
Because it could be anywhere.
Because they can be anywhere. Palliative care provides better methods of pain control. No, why not?
They both provide.
They both provide, right? We ain't going to be mean to our poor hospice patients. Hospice care will help me and my family prepare for death. All right, we like that one. What about D? Palliative care does not include any advanced directives? Yeah, they do, right? An advanced directive is not just do CPR or not. Advanced directives, and we're going to talk about it briefly, includes a lot more than that. So, yes, palliative care does include more than that. But hospice basically helps them prepare for death. Something a lot of people don't want to talk about. All right. So end of life is this final phase of illness. Death is a coming. This is when they call. I don't mean to joke about it, but it's imminent. So this period of time from diagnosis to death varies. Some people get a diagnosis. My aunt got a diagnosis of lung cancer. She was told 6 months. She died 2 weeks later. So we don't know. You know, some people are told you have cancer. You have 6 months to live, and 5 years later they're still kicking. So it really varies, and it's hard. Doctors do their best, but you can't always control. And it focuses on physical and psychosocial needs of the patient and the family. I'm going to go quickly, and it's okay, right? Okay. So our goals, again, we're providing comfort, support. Again, improving quality of life. Same things. Again, ensure a dignified death. And providing emotional support. So all the things we're doing in palliative care and hospice care already, we're just going to continue to do during those last moments of the patient's life. So it's no different. This next slide has a lot of writing. Everyone take a deep breath. You're not going to have to write everything down, okay? We're just going to like sit and observe, meditate if we need to. I tried to meditate. That is annoying. It was horrible. I did it for 2 days and I quit. All right, I believe this is so, I asked about the 9th edition. It was our understanding that the 10th was not starting until January. So for those who were told that they needed to buy it, I don't know where that information came from. And if you could tell me. Yeah.
Yeah, we have it.
You all have the 9th edition?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got the impression yesterday some of you had the 10th. I'm sorry. All right. I was going to say, all my stuff is off the 9th. So if you have the 10th, I'm going to have to look that up. I'm technically still reviewing the 10th. So, but either one is fine. A lot of times they're just missing a page or two. You know, there's a page or two difference between the editions. So take a deep breath. You don't have to write everything down. These are all the things. I'm just going to go ahead and put the whole thing on there. Okay? Take a breath. It's okay. I told you. Don't. Did I tell you I would guide you? Do I misguide? For those who know me?
No, this is table 10 too.
This is table 10 too. All right? Highlight it in your book.
Yeah.
Who's got their book? Can you see if it's in 10 too? And I'll verify. All right. It is? Perfect. Highlight that. Make it your friend. So, what system is the first to go? Respiratory. Okay? I would maybe know that. So, respiratory is often the first to go. They have all different things that happen. Irregular. They don't cough or clear. They have that little death rattle. They lose sensory. Skin changes. They become incontinent. They have decreased to no urine output. They may not blink their eyes, which creeps a lot of people out, right? Because they'll be even sleeping and their eyes will be right open. My daughter sleepwalks, and that creeps me out when she has her eyes open like that. Heart rate, they can have an increased heart rate at first, and then it decreases. The big thing with them, just remember that their absorption of sub-Q and IM drugs may be varied. They have decreased muscle tone, decreased metabolism. They lose their sphincter control, and oftentimes, like literally right before death, they have a bowel movement. Like they have a bowel movement and they pass away. So again, this is table 10-2. If you really want to go and explore the table and write it on your slide, I would, for your benefit, but I think we'll be okay if we move on. I think there's like 10 pages in the book about it. It's a lot. All right, so psychosocial, they have some altered decision making. Physical we can deal with, right? We make them comfortable. Psychosocial we have to get a little bit more involved with. They're fearful, right? They have anxiety. And they start reviewing their life. Is this okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we want them to. We want them to talk with their some of the families will be like, no, don't start. Because they'll be like, Jordan, I really enjoyed that time together that we had. And it was very special to me. And blah, blah, blah. And then the family will start to freak out. And they'll be like, why are you talking like that? Don't give up yet. They need that. They're reviewing it. They want to tell you that this was good, that they enjoyed this, that they wish they would have done this better, that they wish... and they may even say, I wish I would have never smoked. And say, just be there. That's what they need. They need to kind of review their life. They want to make it meaningful, right? All of you are here because you want your lives to mean something. And they're at the death's doorstep, and they want to be that it meant something to them. That I meant something to you, and you meant something to me. Then... sometimes they have this great anxiety and fear, and sometimes after they kind of review their life and they know it's there, they develop this peacefulness. A lot of people know it's coming and they accept it. They're like, I've lived a great life. I've reviewed it. I'm happy with my choices. I've made my mistakes, but overall it was great. I'm ready to go. That's okay. And they start saying their goodbyes. Again, family members will start freaking out because can you call Susie for me on the phone? I want to tell her that I love her. Sometimes they can be withdrawn. So again, can people experience some of these, all of these?
Yes.
Right? It's very varied. All right, bereavement. This is this time following the death of a loved one. This is where grief and mourning occur. So we're going to talk about grief and mourning, but bereavement is the time frame. It's a state of loss. And the time spent varies big time. It can be a few days, months, it can take years. And the process varies. Some people like to talk about it. Some people don't want to talk about it. Like I said, because it can take years. My mom passed away 3 years ago this summer. It happened. I still would say I'm in a state of bereavement because there's still times when I grieve. There's still times. And there's sometimes I don't talk about it at all. And it doesn't affect my life. Or I shouldn't say affect. But doesn't, with the daily stuff. And then there's days where I drop down in coals and I cry for no reason. So it varies big time. So grief is the reaction to loss. So if bereavement is the time, grief is how we react to the loss. It's normal, dynamic process. It has both psychological and physiological functions, right? So people can get depressed, they can get angry, sad, but they can also get tachycardic, they can have respiration changes, they can get stomach upset. We want to provide a lot of opportunities to express those feelings. If they don't want to, that's okay. Just tell them that you're here to talk to them. Sometimes silence is the best thing. After a bit of silence, they may start talking. And many factors affect grief. The relationship they had with that person. If there was any other life stressors. What happens if you're going through the middle of divorce and all of a sudden you found out your parent died too, you know? Or your child has an acute illness and then something else happens. That might make grief harder. Your reaction might be stronger had you not had these other things. Cultural beliefs, religious, how we deal with death. There's a lot of cultures that deal with death various ways. The person's personality, their social and economic support, time preparing for the death. You know, sometimes death is sudden, sometimes we can see death coming. All those things can change. And there are all those different models. The 5 stages of grief and the grief wheel. Y'all, I mean, people go through grief. We won't go into all of those. They're in your book. If you're really excited and going to go into counseling, you can review them. But we won't go there today. All right. So the grief, there's different grief experiences. There's anticipatory. The grief before death. They know death is coming. They start grieving. I'm going to miss my mom when she's gone. I'm going to miss my husband now that he's been diagnosed. Even with a child, like my child has cancer, so I'm grieving, you know, why they go through this. Then there's adaptive. This is healthy. Positive memories, and you're seeing some good from death. It helps to accept the reality of death. So for me, and I don't mean to bring it down, I talk about it. Me talking about it with you guys about my mom's mistakes makes me feel like something came good from her death. If I can help prevent somebody else's medical error, that makes me feel like I learned something from it, or her death was, you know, worth something, right? So it's trying to see the good out of it. Having positive memories. Her birthday was just last week. So we went to the gravesite, and I thought we were going to catch the whole gravesite on fire because we gave a 2 and a 4 and an 8 and a 10-year-old sparklers, and they ran around the gravesite singing happy birthday, and the 2-year-old dropped the sparkler, and it caught fire, and we were a hot mess out there. But we tried to have a positive memory, and we were dying laughing knowing that my mom would have just been hysterically laughing at this. Dysfunctional is prolonged. It's denial for greater than 6 months. And it affects quite a bit of people. 1 in 5 people get affected by this. So, do you have some dysfunctional grieving in the beginning? Certainly. Like I said, I went to Kohl's the first Thanksgiving after my mom, and I saw the Christmas decorations go up, and that was her jam, is to get to Kohl's and get all the deals. And I like fell to the floor crying, where my husband was like, get up now. Like, he had taken my son to the bathroom, and me and my daughter had walked in, and I had a panic attack, a straight up panic attack. Couldn't breathe, couldn't catch my breath. I'm on the floor, like laying on the floor of Kohl's, crying hysterically. And my husband comes around, he's like, what's she doing? Go! And my poor sweet daughter was like, it's okay. It's okay. My grandma died. It's okay. I mean, if we could talk about dysfunctional, like, we had some moments that first month. Like, my sisters and I tried to go, so when she passed away, it had not even been a week. And we were all in the house, and it was over 4th of July weekend, so her funeral got delayed a little bit because of the holiday. And so we were all like camped out at my house. I had 20 people stay at my house for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So, because all my sisters and their husbands and their kids. And so we decided, the 4 sisters, we were going to go to a movie. And we get to the movie theater and we park. And I have 1 sister in the front seat, 2 in the back. And I open the door. My sister behind me swings open her door and hits the car next to us. Well, the lady was in there. So she shuts her door and just sits there. So the lady's going psycho on us, right? So I get out and I said, ma'am, I'm like, ma'am, there was no damage. I'm really sorry. We've had a really hard week. Could you just, give it to us? And she was going off and blah, blah, blah. And I said, ma'am, our mom just passed away. We really were just trying to get out and see a movie. There's no damage to your car. We're really sorry. Well, she should be out here apologizing this and this and this. And she made some comment about how our mother raised horrible children or something. Well, my one sister that has a problem controlling her temper came flying up out of that car through the woman's open window as the woman was driving away. I was like, oh my God, we're going to get arrested and can't go to mom's funeral. So that might have been dysfunctional. All right. So things like that happen. You just don't act in your right mind. But they're short term, right? That happened all in the first couple of weeks. And we moved on. If it's 6 months later, a year later, if I couldn't laugh about that story now, then I might be dysfunctional grieving. If I still got upset by those things, I might be dysfunctional. But otherwise, most people adapt it. But you would be surprised how many people, again, depending on the relationships. Y'all gonna think I'm real crazy now, huh? All right. So spiritual needs, 10-5. So see, no matter how crazy you all act, nursing school, I got you. All right, I'm going to go quickly through this. Oops. No, that wouldn't be that quick. Again, is it table 10-5? So you've got it if you need it. Spiritual needs. It's a belief or value. It does not have to be religious. It's just whatever that person believes. It's some kind of, it doesn't have to include a believing in a higher power. But people who have some kind of spiritual connection typically have decreased despair. And it's very individual. So what is culturally competent care? Obviously, we want you guys as nurses to always provide this. And again, I'm going to go kind of quickly. Not that quickly. It affects the understanding, attitude to death, loss, treatment decisions. It's, again, very individualized, and it requires a really good assessment by the nurse. And this includes both verbal and nonverbal cues by the patient and their family. They may be reluctant to tell you they don't like something, so the nurse has got to read, how does the family act when I do this treatment? How do they act when we discuss this? If they're sensing something that's not right, then you say, how are you feeling about this? I'm getting a sense you don't like it. And avoid stereotypes. All right, just because my mom, what she requested, she wanted a Baptist black choir at her wedding, or at her funeral, and that is what we had. We had the choir show up in full robes, and they sang This Little Light of Mine. It was the best thing ever. That's what she wanted. Would you ever picture me having that? No, I wouldn't. So, so don't, all right, those who know me maybe. But that's what my mama wanted, right? So don't stereotype things. Talk to the family, ask them what they want. What are some legal and ethical? There are all sorts. We are going to focus on advanced directives, but things that we talk about towards the end of life include like organ donation, how they want to be resuscitated, tube feedings. All these are different things. They're discussed in your book at length. But all of this is a process that involves having the patient think through, talk about, and document what they want. All right, I'm going to move on because that's just an overview. So, advanced directives is what we're going to particularly talk about. And again, that's table 10-6. It is written document stating the medical care. They have to be competent when they fill it out. So what they're saying, and advance directive, it's called different things in different places, but what they're saying is what treatment they want, what treatment's desired, what treatments are not desired, what medical care do they want. So if something happened to me, if I drop to the floor right now, I hope all of you have practiced your CPR. If I drop to the floor right now, what do I want? Do I want you to do compressions? Do I want you to start meds? Whatever they want. It has to be written and the patient has to be competent. So examples are like the living will. So a living will is an advance directive. Sometimes people use those words interchangeably, and different states have different names. So I know it can get confusing. Don't read too much into it right now. Just understand the concept. Patient can change their mind at any time. So reassessment is important. Just because a patient comes in and you're like, oh, they have an advance directive, I'm not going to ask anything. No, say, hey, I see you have an advance directive on file. Do you have any changes or are you fine with that? They may say, you know what, I'm done. I don't want chest compressions now. Last hospitalization, I saw what that did and I don't want it. So they can change it at any time. But again, they have to be competent to change it. If it's not specified, it falls to the spouse and the adult children. So it's really important that you write down who you want as your person to take care of you or to kind of follow through with your living will. So if you're separated and going through a divorce but not divorced, it's going to fall on that person you're separated from first. If any of you have gone through a separation or a bad breakup, would you want that person in charge? No. Yes. So you want to be careful about that, okay? If not, it goes to your adult children, and it typically starts with the oldest and works their way down. So I am not the oldest child, but my dad was alive, but he does not like medical stuff. So my mom and dad have designated me. I'm not the spouse and I'm not the oldest child, but they wanted me to make the decisions. My one sister, who has maybe anger management issues, she would do, my parents don't want they don't want mechanical ventilation and all that. But my sister's like, we will do everything. I will keep you in my house as a vegetable. My parents are like, oh my God, she can never make a decision for us. So it's important to know that. It's important to talk with your families and figure that out. Because if you don't, and you haven't figured that out, and you haven't written it down, and you don't have this living will to say what I do and don't want, it's going to fall to these people. Some of them may be crazy. So, and it's always really important that we consider the patient's values and their manner of life. How did they live? How would we want them? Like my parents, they don't want to be vegetable, so maybe I wasn't designated, but I need to keep that in mind. And again, it varies by state. So, with a legal, with the durable power of attorney for healthcare, that's what it's called in Florida. It's called a healthcare surrogate. So again, each state's a little different. Each state calls it a little bit different thing. So a living will is what's written down. A living will is an advance directive. An advance directive is a legal document that is written down when you're competent that states what you want. A healthcare surrogate or a durable power of attorney or whatever they're called is the person that's going to carry this out. So they're a designated spokesperson for when the patient's not competent, right? So the patient filled out their document when they were, and they said, this is what I want, I'm competent, I know what's going on. Now they're no longer competent. Now the healthcare surrogate or durable power of attorney, whoever, steps in and says, I'm going to follow out what they wanted. They make the healthcare decisions for the patient when they're unable to. So again, it's important to designate someone that is going to carry out your wishes. Because if my parents designated my sister and said, Catherine's in charge of this, and she says, yes, this is what my parents want, but I'm telling you that I want to do everything, they're going to listen to the healthcare surrogate, okay? So you make sure that the person you designate is someone that's going to follow your living will as much as possible. Because can the living will cover everything? No, they can be very in-depth or they can be very kind of broad. So a lot of times the healthcare surrogate has to make decisions that walk the gray line. So resuscitation, this is CPR. So it's basically the term given for respiratory and cardiac arrest. Now there's different types, and I'm just going to briefly go over this. So there's a full code, a chemical code, a DNR. I think they're changing the DNR to AND, allow natural death. So so that it doesn't sound, because again, people feel guilty, right? DNR, don't resuscitate. Oh God, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. This person's hurt and I should be helping them, and I'm not. So I think they're trying to go to AND, bless you. Allow natural death so that it sounds more kosher. But chemical code is when they do drugs and CPR. I'm sorry, drugs but no CPR. So maybe they'll give an epinephrine, but the person doesn't want chest compressions. A full code would include everything. So they're trying to get away from CPR because that's kind of broad and use more things like full code, chemical code, so that it is more specific, so that the patient's wishes are carried out. So what's your job? My future nurses in December. Wait, no, we're not. Oh yeah, December. Couldn't remember what semester we're in. We want, again, we talked about all this. Provide dignity, comfort, provide holistic care, teaching coping skills. And we coordinate the care, right? We're these case managers. We're making sure that these patients are getting a great quality of life, that they are getting everything that they need. We talked about, I'm going to move on. Everyone okay? Oh, real quick. And it's everything we've talked about. I mean, we just keep reiterating the same points, right? It's all about quality of life, about dignity, about comfort. So physical, on page, I think that's 1010 again, right? All those things we talked about. How do we deal with respiratory issues, with the bowel issues? We're just going to, I mean, physical is pretty easy. We just manage their symptoms. We focus on all these things: oxygen, nutrition, pain relief. We want to keep them a little bit mobile, move them around in bed so they don't get, you know, sores or uncomfortable. Oh, 10-8? Oh, here we go. Watch. Yes. Hold on. And 8, okay? Thank you. So we eliminate, like, this is not a full assessment like what we do in the hospital. It's essential data. We're not like deep breath, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. No, like, they're not going to breathe that many times. We're going to focus, a lot of times, what's the worst thing people feel? Pain, nausea, right? Feeling nauseous is horrible. We typically only do every 8 hours or with any changes. And it also includes any social aspects. And again, documentation is very important. We try to use so if you have a patient coming to you for hospice or for palliative care that's new to you, use their medical record as much as possible so that you're not asking this per person. Now, when was your hysterectomy? In 1942? Like, they don't need to get all that. We're just trying to make, what do we need to know to make them comfortable towards the end? We don't need to, like, it's not like a care plan, okay? Psychosocial, is this 10-9? Did I get that one right? All right. So, Again, all the things we talked about. The anxiety, they have anger, they may feel hopeless. We need to address these things. But fear, 10-7. Thank you so much. I'm going to make it go away for just a second. A lot of their fear comes from the pain and the shortness of breath, right? We said respiratory was the first to go. So can we eliminate a lot of their fear if we treat their pain and their shortness of breath? Yes. People don't want to feel sick. They're afraid of it. I wasn't feeling good this morning, and I was like, oh, God. It made me even more anxious because I was like, I can't get sick. I got to go spend 4 hours lecturing. I can't sit up there sick. It makes people super anxious. So, yeah, shortness of breath, SOB. That can stand for something else, but we're not going to use that term. All right. And communication and active living is essential. All right. A lot of people want to delay pain care because they're afraid that it's going to hasten death. But that's not what we're doing. Again, they're really fearful. And if they're hurting, we treat them. And when do we treat them? Based on whatever they say it is, whenever they say it is. We aren't dictating. Again, everything we do is driven by the patient and their family. All right. So I'm going to go over this quickly, so it's okay, right? Everything will be okay. Needs of the family and caregivers. It's important in meeting their patient's physical and psychological needs. When we feel like our family member's been taken care of, we feel better, right? They have high stress levels. They may have a lot of economic consequences. When my mom got sick, I had to take a 2-month leave, and I was in the hospital. That took a hit on my family and my kids because I was the one who used to drive them to school and pick them up, and now mommy was gone for 14 hours a day. So it can impact the family significantly. I'll tell you a story just because it's funny. So I had been at the hospital for like 7 days straight with my mom, and my sister came and she's like, you need a break. We need a break. We've got to go. So we go to Red Robin, and this has nothing to do, but I just think it's a funny story. So they need this kind of break. So I'm drained. I'm upset. We go to Red Robin, and we're with my son, who I think was 5 at the time, and he always wore this Spider-Man basketball shirt every day. Spider-Man basketball shirt. As soon as I could wash it, he would wear it again. Sometimes he would take it out of the dirty laundry. And it came with a pair of mesh pants. So my sister picks me up. We go with the 2 kids. We go out to dinner, and my sister is sitting there, and I'm upset. I'm crying. I'm pissed that she brought me out of the hospital. I don't want to be there. I want to get back to help. And my sister says to John, buddy, where's the pants that match that outfit? Because she bought him the outfit. And he, without skipping a beat, says, well, my penis was just so big it busted right through. And I was like, and in that moment, we just started dying laughing, right? Like, here we are. The old man next to us literally choked on his food. Someone had to come over. I mean, he was like, ugh, like, and John is just like, yep. Like, it was no, and all he meant was that's where the seam had broken apart. They were a cheap pair of mesh pants, and that's where the seam, and he just assumed that because he had grown, because he had had that outfit for a long time, that he outgrown his pants. So, or you men just start that real early about being real proud. I don't know. But sometimes they need that little break. So as much as I didn't want to go, as much as I was angry and upset, it was really good for me because we laughed so hard we cried for like hours. And it was a nice break. And I went back refreshed and I did a better job. They need that, right? They're dealing with their own needs and feelings. They need breaks. They need help. And that's how we can provide it to them. And then also there's you guys have needs, right? As the nurse, do we get really involved with our patients? Yeah. So be aware of how that grief affects you. How are you taking it home? You develop bonds with these people. You get really upset. You take, even as like my mom's healthcare giver, why didn't I catch that? Why did I miss that? You as the nurse will do that with you. These patients will become your family members. I should have seen that they were this. I should have caught this sooner. You're not immune to feelings of loss and hopelessness. I think that's sometimes why we're a little crude. I work in the ER. We are incredibly crude. Like, the things... Don't say anything, Christine. We may say things in the ER because I think it provides a little bit of a barrier so that we don't take everything home. You can't take everything home. You have got to have a support system that doesn't involve your workplace. You can't like be at work all day and then come home and talk about it all day. Like, you've got to have some kind of break or you're just going to kind of go down a spiral. You have to be involved in your own hobbies and interests. And it's okay to cry with the family. It's okay to be upset with them. When I was a brand new nurse, I worked in the pediatric ICU up at Shands. And I had a little girl that I loved. I took care of her in the ICU. She ended up going home. I took a home health job to help her. She was going to be my flower girl in my wedding. I mean, I got way involved with this family, way more than I probably should have, but I did. And she passed away. And I cried with the family and more, and we're still friends. They have watched, I mean, that was 14 years ago. They came to, like, things of my kids. So it's okay to get involved and to cry with them but just realize your limitations and realize the space that you need. All right, so the hospice nurse visits with the wife of a dying patient. The nurse is most concerned if the patient's wife makes what statement? I don't think that I can live without my husband to take care of me. I wonder if expressing my sadness makes my husband feel worse. We have shared so much that it's hard to realize that I will be alone. I don't feel guilty about leaving him to go to lunch with my friends. Yeah, A. It's really dysfunctional. We've got to make sure that the families are coping well. They've got to be able to kind of move on after that death. They can be sad. They can be worried about how their feelings are affecting them, but they've got to have some functional grieving and some functional processes. All right, so I know that was, I'm going to stop the recording real quick.